friends, it's Anna. Welcome to one of my most exciting and special videos. We are doing a flip through of my first completed bullet journal of 2024. I did a lot of experimenting with different spreads and planning methods this year, so I can't wait to show you guys that evolution, my favorite spreads, what worked, what didn't, and let you see how I actually use my journal day to day, month to month. Grab some tea or coffee, get cozy, and let's get into it. So first, of course, we have my name page, and then a very, very important spread. This is my grid spacing bookmark. I use this all the time to figure out how I can divide my pages, or also just to count the squares on the page. In case you haven't seen one of these before, it's basically a tool to help you see different ways to divide up the page. I've numbered all the squares vertically and horizontally and then divided up the page in different ways, thirds, fourth, quarters. I like having it as a bookmark. You can see I even made this little pouch so I could keep it in, and that way whenever I'm working on a spread, I can just lay this directly on the page and use it kind of like a ruler. Over here on this left side, we have my dopamine menu. These are just some ideas for little splashes of dopamine. Next, we have my 2024 cover and quote page. This quote is from writer Carol, the founder of the original bullet journal method. And then my year at a glance with this Dutch door, which I love. That way, it kind of makes it feel like this whole spread is just on this one page. Here I did some reflective journaling, my core values, who I want to be, what my dream life looks like. These are the things that kind of help me set my 2024 goals. I'm not doing the best on all of these goals that I set. I actually grayed out some of them, which ironically, one of these is the few that I've actually completed, the one that I chose to gray out. But I'm gonna need to do some reflecting in my next journal for kind of where I am in these, which ones I want to keep, and how I want to move forward with those. Here's another spread that I didn't use as often as I thought I would. This is my someday task, which was designed to be kind of a catch-all for tasks that didn't fit into monthly or weekly spreads, but I didn't find myself flipping back to this one as much, so I didn't include it in my next journal. One of my 2024 goals was to run a 5K, so here's the little training plan that I made for my husband and we did run a Cinco de Mayo 5K, so that was really fun, and I'm glad I got to check off that goal. Hopefully we'll run another one this fall as well. And then here's my content calendar spread. Some empty pages. I always like to leave a few extra pages after my new bullet journal setup, just in case I come up with more spreads I want to add. Now we're getting into monthly spreads. My January theme was snowflakes, and you'll see I was still using a calendar layout in the beginning months, but that'll actually change to a different layout later on. Here's where I kind of did most of my planning in my notes for the month spread, so I had a place for intentions and tasks and reflections. You'll see this spread kind of evolve throughout the journal as well. I did a lot of experimenting the first few months, the first full half of this year in my journal, so you'll see quite an evolution as we go through the months. I don't think 2 months are exactly the same. I was testing out a lot of different spreads and layouts, so that's really fun for me to look back on as well. Here's a weekly layout that I really like using. I use this faux Dutch door so that a task list on the side is always visible no matter what day of the week I'm looking at. You can see this week I didn't color in the snowflakes. Sometimes if I'm low on time, I just make my weekly spreads a little easier. And now getting into February, which was a really simple rose theme. I'm still using my calendars and my notes for the month pages, but you can see I tested out journaling about my annual goals on this spread instead of putting the reflections up here. And here's also where I moved away from the habit tracker that tracked multiple habits and started using my sleep log. Sleep was one of the main health goals I wanted to work on this year, and the sleep log was really helpful for kind of seeing where in my routine were the pain points and the things I needed to work on to get more sleep. I will say I'm still working on this, so I don't know if the sleep log was enough to solve the problem of me getting enough sleep, but it definitely let me see what I needed to work on most. And you'll see sometimes I just add like random reflections or journaling in spare space I have on the page. Here's a little bit of social media planning. I started an Instagram to go with this YouTube account this year, so here were some beginning musings on some of my first posts. And now we're in March, which is one of my favorite ever themes. This was my ancient Rome theme. We have a quote from Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I used this gold vintage botanicals washi tape from the washi tape shop. I hope you can see how the gold kind of reflects in the light. I think it's so beautiful. And then I did some green accents and drawings of Roman busts and the columns on the calendar page. I'm really proud of this bust drawing right here. Still doing my sleep log at this point. I did it for a few months, and you'll see in a lot of my trackers there are some blank spaces. Something I've learned about in my journal is that it really stresses me out to try to backtrack. So if I'm using a tracker and I miss a few days of filling it in, I usually just leave it blank and don't worry about going back and trying to remember, because that just adds more stress, and I've learned to just accept if there are some blank spots. Here you can see I didn't do any decoration for my March reflection, but I had quite a lot to write. And that's another thing that I'm working on, is not letting decorating the page be a barrier to using my journal to write down something I need to. A lot of the times I feel like I need to make a spread pretty and prepare it before I can write something down, but that's really a barrier to using my journal sometimes. So I'm working on that perfectionism and trying to be a little looser with how I use my journal. Here we have some spreads for the last few weeks leading up to our 5K and some plans I was making for opening my art shop, which I'm still hoping to do this year, but that kind of got pushed back since we found out we are moving next month, and so that kind of took over everything this summer. Now into April, and you'll see this is where my monthly spreads really kind of start drastically changing. In March is when I finished Ryder Carroll's book, The Bullet Journal Method, and I started testing out some of his original spread layouts. So I moved to a monthly log instead of calendar. This was a big shift for me because I like being able to visualize the month in the calendar layout, but I actually liked this log a lot more than I thought I would. First of all, the spread is super easy to set up, and also there's a lot more room to write events and things down than when you're limited to the boxes of a calendar. And then I kind of just put my tasks and goals on the side of the log. Still doing my sleep and mood trackers, and then my reflections, and I did a little self-kindness spread on the left. I also changed up my weekly spreads pretty drastically. In Ryder Carroll's method, he doesn't draw out his daily sections in advance. He just writes the title of the day that morning, writes what he needs to in the daily log, and then at the start of the next day, he titles it for the new day and continues from there. And so, as you can imagine, that's a really good use of space because you can use however much room you need for the day. Like on Tuesday, I didn't need that much. On Wednesday, I used a little more. So you're not limited on space at all. And also, it's utilizing the pages a lot better because I'm not making full columns for a day where I only need to write this much. I kept my weekly task list, but started making it a little shorter. And you can see, I wasn't even using all the space in these 2 pages. I don't use my journal every day. Sometimes my days are pretty clearly laid out, and so I don't feel like I need to make a plan or have a certain task list. But on the days that there is a lot going on, it's really nice to have this designated space. April is also the month that I started doing memory spreads. I use this mini portable printer from Lean. It prints these little 2x3 photos, and I've really loved having these in my journal. I can kind of see the highlights of the month. Here we have some more kind of random spreads that you can see I didn't really end up using that much. And now we're into May. This was my butterfly theme, another one of my favorites. I'm still using the log format here. I have a task section. This is another section for my annual goals. I didn't use my trackers a lot in May because I was traveling or sick for a lot of it, but again, I try not to stress about backtracking or filling it in later. A spread is never useful if I'm forcing myself to use it. I just like having the space available for when I really need to use it. And I'm still using that weekly format. I really liked this weekly layout. I think that's one of my favorite things that I started implementing from Writer Carol's method. I think the first weekly layout with the faux Dutch door that I was using was for most weeks just a little too much space, and I didn't need to be using all 4 pages. And here you can see I have the beginnings of a May memories spread. I've planned out what pictures I want to print here and done a little bit of the decorating, but I still need to go back and finish filling this in. And now we're into the last month of this journal, June. This was my teacup and floral theme. Let me know in the comments which theme is your favorite from this 6 months. I think I'm torn between the March spreads with the ancient Rome theme and the butterflies in May. Here are my last few weeklies. Some reflection. And as you can see, sometimes if I'm low on time in weeklies, I won't decorate it, but I'll use the same layout and add some color. And this is a great way to keep spreads minimal and fast, and it still looks pretty and goes with the rest of the month's theme, but it didn't take me hardly any time to set up. And that's it for my first journal of 2024. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing my spreads, seeing how I use my journal. Be sure to let me know in the comments which theme, which spreads were your favorite, and I'll see you again soon in my next video.